The dating app Tinder was released in 2012. Shortly after its debut, the app started to gain attention, thousands of users, and positive reviews. It offered a simple interface for users and a unique strategy for sifting through endless accounts of singles. Since its release, it has risen to be one of the most used dating apps of all time. However, not every result of a Tinder match is positive. While the algorithm can sift out profiles to some extent, there's no way of knowing who is truly behind the screen. These true terrifying events related to Tinder will surely encourage you to practice extra precaution while swiping. Number 5. Then 26-year-old African migrant known as Augustine was the victim of a brutal attack by 3 women in Melbourne, Australia in 2017. He'd been living in the area for a few months, and he frequently used Tinder to meet women and potential friends to counter the loneliness one may experience in a new place. Augustine eventually matched with a woman in this area. They spent time chatting, texting, and talking on the phone before they agreed to meet in person and go on a real date. Eager for the social interaction, Augustine got ready that evening and headed directly to his date's location. When he arrived, he realized that his date had 2 other women with her. The trio begged for him to give the 2 friends a ride from Richmond to Sunshine, and trying to make sure that his date ran smoothly, he agreed to do so. The women got in, talked to him, and enjoyed the ride for a few miles. Sadly though, the car ride took a dark turn, much to Augustine's surprise. The women suddenly pulled out weapons and held Augustine at knife point. They demanded the keys to his car and any money that he had on him. Despite his cooperation, the women slashed him in the neck and head several times, injuring him badly. At one point during the chaos, Augustine jumped out of his vehicle and tried to run. However, he decided to get his keys back. He ran back toward the vehicle again and was stabbed several more times before the women fled at full speed in the opposite direction. A few moments later, 2 women in a passing car pulled over to inspect the situation and offer Augustine help. They attended to his wounds to the best of their ability while they waited for an ambulance and police to arrive. Augustine was rushed to the hospital and had to undergo serious procedures to save his life. Luckily, he did survive. There have been no updates about whether or not his attackers were apprehended, at least not publicly. This event serves as a reminder to be cautious when meeting people online, and if something feels suspicious, don't move forward with the situation. Number 4. In early 2019, in Colorado Springs, 2 men were arrested and accused of using Tinder to meet and lure men that they would later rob. A fake Tinder account used the stolen photos of very beautiful young women, and was used to communicate with men in the Colorado Springs area. Unsuspecting victims would match with the woman and chat with her in hopes of meeting in person. One evening, 2 men that had been communicating with the alleged beauty were invited to go to her apartment for drinks and a fun night. Of course, unbeknownst to them, this lovely woman's profile was actually being run by then 24-year-old Robert Jones and 19-year-old Melchizedek Gordon. The men arrived at the apartment expecting to have a lovely evening with their match, and instead they were greeted by the suspects. According to similar reports that each victim later gave to police, as soon as they arrived and before they'd even had time to process what was happening, they were screamed at by the suspects who all pulled out guns and pointed them in their faces. Shocked and confused, both men calmly obeyed the suspects' demands and handed over their wallets, cash, phones, and keys. The suspects fled the scene after collecting the stolen loot. Just to add insult to injury, the suspects stole one of the victims' trucks. The victims then took a moment to calm down and process what had just happened before notifying police. Their statements were taken, and in a surprisingly short amount of time, the suspects were apprehended. It's unclear if the victims got everything back or not, but at least justice would be served. After their arrest, investigators found that 2 men may have been responsible for at least 7 similar cases that happened in the area. The public was warned about the crimes, which happened before December 2018, and police urged the community to be more careful about online dating meetup apps, suggesting first dates should occur in a public space. Number 3. Tinder has over 50 million users, which may seem like a positive thing for those looking for love. It seems that with so many users, the chances of finding a great person are much more likely. However, unfortunately for some, disturbed criminals can take advantage of the pool of users to find their next victim. In late 2018, then 21-year-old Wyatt Dean Martin from Logan, Utah, logged onto Tinder to begin his search for a new target. Wyatt matched with a lovely woman who remained unidentified and sparked a conversation with her. After some casual flirting and general normal conversation, Wyatt invited the woman to his home. Later that night, she agreed and arrived at what was supposed to be a relaxing date. The victim later claimed that upon her arrival, Wyatt pressured her to drink. She'd never consumed alcohol before and declined Wyatt's offer. However, he persisted and became pushy with his date. Finally, in hopes of smoothing things over, she took a shot of whiskey. Then, Wyatt allegedly made her drink what he claimed was nothing more than sweet tea. After a few drinks, the victim realized that the beverage did contain alcohol. She explained that after the 2 drinks, she started to feel sleepy and significantly more intoxicated than she should have. She began to wonder if Wyatt had slipped something into her drink, and Wyatt took the woman to the bedroom and began removing her clothes. In a loopy state of mind, the woman tried to decline his offer and push him away. He responded by being even more aggressive. Frozen in fear, the victim tried to fight back and refuse. That's when Wyatt pulled out a strap similar to a belt and told the woman if she didn't cooperate, he would tie her up. Afraid of being restrained, the woman complied. Wyatt then assaulted her, and after the nightmare was over, the victim tested a male friend for help and made a call to another. Wyatt snatched her phone and ended the call. The details following the attack that were publicly released are a bit blurry. It's assumed that at some point the victim was able to leave and then report the experience to the police. A hospital exam and evidence collected from Martin's apartment matched up with the victim's report. Wyatt was apprehended and charged, but during the investigation, it became aware to detectives that this was not the only case involving Wyatt. After the story was broadcast, 3 additional female victims came forward to report similar attacks carried out by the suspect. It's still possible that Wyatt had racked up a small trail of victims. Reports and public statements surrounding the case urge victims to come forward if they were attacked by Wyatt. Information about the case was also used to highlight the dangers of meeting strangers online and the possible consequences that may happen if users aren't more cautious. Number 2. 22-year-old Pennsylvania resident Eduardo Venegas was arrested in September of 2019 for attacking a woman he met on Tinder. Eduardo used the dating app to meet his 22-year-old victim. The pair matched and started a conversation. Apparently, their interaction went well and Eduardo suggested a date. The victim agreed and they made plans to go out. It's unknown exactly what was supposed to happen on their date, but it's very clear that things took a disturbing turn and a fun evening out with a new person quickly turned into a sickening and traumatizing event. Eduardo picked up his date and they traveled to a nearby town. While little information about their destination is available, we can assume they parked in an isolated area away from busy streets. Eduardo parked the vehicle and told his date to step outside. They both exited the car, and that's when Eduardo suddenly attacked his victim. Police reported that Eduardo hit the woman in the head and face several times. She fell to the ground and he proceeded to choke her. He then continued to assault her as she laid motionless on the ground, and when he was done, he left the woman there and drove away. She woke up later and made her way to a nearby store to call the police. Apparently, it wasn't difficult for officers to locate and arrest Eduardo. He was taken in, and after evidence matched the victim's claims, he was charged. Although it is yet to be confirmed, it's possible that this was another case with more unidentified victims. Media and law enforcement urged any woman that had fallen victim to Eduardo to come forward and share their story so that justice can be properly served. Needless to say, this crime served as yet another example for dating app users. Number 1. Megan Tapley and Eric Stelzer met on Tinder and began casually dating. The pair had gone on several dates while Megan's family was unsure of exactly how long they'd been seeing each other, but knew them well enough to confirm that when this incident occurred, it wasn't a first date by any means. On this particular evening out in January of 2019, Eric went to Megan's house to spend a few hours with her. The couple hung out as usual and things seemed completely normal. Eventually, Eric asked for a ride home. Megan didn't want to leave her house, but according to her sister's statement, she didn't want to tell Eric to get an Uber and come off as rude. So she agreed and the pair headed to his home. Megan went in for a few minutes to say goodbye. The full story of what went on inside that house that night is a mystery. At some point during her visit, things drastically changed. Megan was trying to leave the house as Eric attacked her physically, according to a report. He tried to restrain her and block her path because he didn't want her to leave. They fought as Megan desperately tried to get the door. At that moment, the neighbors had already heard the couple yelling and Megan's screams. The cries for help got even louder though when Eric reached for a knife. He wounded her several times in various portions of her body as she screamed in pain and still attempted to fight back. As a result of Megan's concerning screams, the neighbor called 911 and police arrived at the scene. For a while, there was a standoff in which Eric threatened to further harm Megan if police tried to stop him. After some time, officers decided enough was enough, and they used a taser on Eric, causing him to finally release the wounded woman. Eric was apprehended and taken to a hospital due to injuries from the taser. Megan was also rushed to the hospital for her wounds. Eric eventually passed away in the hospital, and some of his family members still insist that the officers at the scene used excessive force after implementing the taser. Megan had to undergo a series of surgeries for her wounds, but she eventually made a full recovery. Eric's family members reported that he was in poor mental health, and they'd previously tried to convince him to seek help. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos. And if you enjoyed this narration, maybe check out my personal channel at youtube.com/Ty_knots.